Welcome to Whirlwind Radio. I'm Jonathan Mansour, filling in for your regular host, Marcelo Sugdeo, and today we've got a packed show lined up for you. We're going to look into some breaking news concerning the sensational young startup movement. We're going to look at some issues facing Google and social media platforms alike, and potentially your business. And to close the show, some exciting developments from SpaceX. So stay tuned for another episode here on Whirlwind Radio. Now let's start with some breaking news from the industry, and this broke today. And so after all the talk of mega funding and palate cleansing, etc., the 5-year-old millennial watch startup, which also happens to be the fastest growing millennial company in the world, watch company in the world that is, and they've reached a revenue of $60 million in just 4 years, that being Movement. MVMT, the watch company you might be familiar with, the company that branded itself with stylish watches at affordable prices with a minimalistic design. They just sold the company to the Swiss watchmaker Movado Group, and they're best known for their museum watches you might be familiar with. And that the company sold, Movement sold for $100 million. And all that's without raising a cent in VC cash. The 40-person team, led by co-founders Jake Casson and Kramer LaPlante, stands to walk with the purchase price, plus up to another $100 million on the company's future performance, which, given Movement's track record, is great news. In just a few years, they've managed to expand to over 160 countries and pulled in $71 million in revenue last year in 2017. And that's a remarkable feat for, if you'll remember, just a couple of college dropouts who essentially said, hey, we got a good business idea, let's make it happen, and they did, so kudos to them. Now, the LA-based company is incredibly strong in social media, and today has a global community of more than 1.5 million Movement owners, so it offers strong expansion for Movado Group into a millennial brand, and also satisfies the group's new digital strategy. Now, the acquisition not only assists the Movado Group in its reach to millennials in its digital expansion, but also gives Movement access to the group's global distribution network, so it's a two-way street. Additionally, Movado Group can enhance its direct-to-consumer approach. Now, Ephraim Grinberg, Movado Group's chairman and CEO, he issued a statement yesterday saying that Jake and Kramer have built an incredible brand and business in just 5 years, and we're excited to have Movement join Movado Group. And the acquisition of Movement will provide us greater access to millennials and advances on our Digital Center of Excellence initiative with the addition of a powerful brand managed by a successful team of highly creative, passionate, and talented individuals. And again, that was issued yesterday by Movado Group. And so what does this mean? Well, if you're a venture capitalist or an angel investor, could this be the start of a trend we're seeing with explosive young startups selling out or being sold just after a few years of rapid success? Again, time will tell, and pun definitely intended there, but there's no doubt that there's much more to come out of this brand and its merging with Movado Group. So now a lighter piece of news, and that is Mike Pence. You may have noticed, if you've searched Mike Pence in the past few days, that his parody site now tops Google search results for his name. Now, if you type Mike Pence's name into Google, you may get the impression that the U.S. Vice President is running for president himself. If you actually click on one of the first links that pops up, though, it's a website called Mike Pence's President, and then you will realize it's a big joke, but no, don't worry, Donald Trump is definitely president, and how could any of us forget? But we're not a political news agency, so back to the tech. Again, this site was clearly fake. It even has a section called Mike Facts with bullet points. Quoting a few, Mike Pence went to college. Mike Pence won third prize in the 1972 Indiana Junior Corn Contest. Additionally, Mike Pence has won 7 penmanship awards, and presumably those are accurate and well-deserved accolades. But as of this writing on Thursday, the parody site either ranks at the top of Google search, or it is the second search result, right beneath a carousel of news stories and Pence's Wikipedia entry. Now again, this site was reportedly created as an April Fool's joke by the website Funny or Die, and resurfaced after Scott Dworkin, who's a Democratic strategist, tweeted it out last week, and that's according to the New York Magazine. So of course, after that Democratic strategist tweeted it out, the general public got hold of it, caught wind, started searching it like crazy, visiting the website like crazy, moving it up in Google's algorithm and having it rank. Now, although this site may have been a joke, it highlights real challenges for Google. Let's consider another piece of news that you might be familiar with, and this is revolving in the social media world, and that this parody pen site has resurfaced as giant tech platforms have publicly struggled with their response to Alex Jones. And if you don't know him, you're better off probably not finding out. But he's a high-profile commentator, very conspicuous, very loud, mostly known for pushing conspiracy theories. And last week, Facebook, YouTube, and Apple, they've all banned Jones from some of their platforms. And on yesterday, Twitter said that it was giving Jones a 7-day suspension, taking away his ability to tweet. So we're clearly, if you haven't noticed, in a very volatile time when it comes to the industry and their transparency, especially in social media. Now, the only way these companies can fix this mess is to be open and honest with all of us about what's actually going on. And Ian Scher from CNET wrote a piece this week on that exact topic, and he basically asked the question, why is that so hard for this transparency, basically to be clear, to be visible, to be at least somewhat obvious? Because there's a fair argument that perhaps some of the things that Alex Jones was putting out, deserve some kind of repercussion. But do they? Because over the past 2 years, the tech industry has found itself in the middle of so many world-changing events. It can be hard to keep track of. We've seen many privacy leaks. Consider Cambridge Analytica, or what happened with the whole Russian interference, DNC server, and there's all kinds of things in the news when it comes to privacy, security, and just how volatile it is and what we're seeing in the news. And yet, we know shockingly little about the decisions that Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube make, impacting billions of people every day. Now, consider all the trouble that Mark Zuckerberg got into just a little while ago with Facebook's transparency policies and what they were doing, but not letting you know with all your personal information. Well, consider just the past week, Alex Jones and his publication InfoWars were largely booted off Apple's iTunes and podcast services, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Stitcher, MailChimp, Vimeo, and the list goes on. In each of these cases, and this is the point that the author makes, Ian Scher here at CNET, in each of these cases, the companies cited that their community rules or terms of services, which prohibit hate speech and harassment and so on and so forth, were violated in some way. So when he approached these companies and he basically said, okay, so can you tell me specifically which policy, which terms of service, what was violated here? He reached out to YouTube, Stitcher, Apple, Facebook, and they said, we can't give you a specific source. We can't cite the violation that occurred. Now that's a problem. If big companies like that, YouTube, Stitcher, Facebook, platform, social media, industry leading, if they can't be transparent enough with you to say, well, this is actually why we took a profile down or banned it or applied this repercussion, well, that's a slippery slope in censorship and content regulation. And the last time I checked, we still live in a free society, so it's something to think about. If you're a business owner, if you handle marketing, social media, you're thinking of what could be a practical solution. There's been many cases where big corporations have gotten into a lot of trouble on social media for whether it's an employee taking matters into his own hands and stating his own very opinionated belief on a controversial topic and having to quickly backtrack, or having the CEO having to offer a public apology. And as we've seen in a lot of cases, it can do a lot of damage. And there are times where, certain material should be taken off social media, but they definitely need to be open and having an open door, transparent policy. And opening up this data doesn't just make sense. It's actually relatively easy to do. I mean, after Zuckerberg was essentially put on trial and testified in front of on Capitol Hill, changes were made. But if you don't believe me, Facebook and Twitter, they've already shared details for political ads on their sites. Earlier this year, Facebook and Twitter both created transparency centers where you can browse through all the political ads published on their respective services and find out who paid for them, how much they paid, and what people they were targeting. And the point he makes in this article is the next logical step is to just do that for everything across the board. Have that kind of transparency so that there's no questions lingering in the air all across the board. And admittedly, there are challenges, and by drawing attention to what social networks pull down and why, whether it's trolls or very opinionated commentators like Alex Jones, they could use that information to learn exactly where the line is. So basically, if Twitter says, we're going to pull you down for this specifically, a troll could say, okay, well, I'm going to go as close to the line, as close to the edge as possible without crossing it. They could tiptoe and just make it a hassle, a bigger problem, create a bigger problem than you need to, or than that's already in place. And this is something that, governments deal with every day. This is something that businesses deal with every day now, especially in this day and age. And the problem is, we can think about how social media guidelines for companies, corporations, they've become hugely important. Again, we touched on how much damage misuse of social media or even an accidental tweet or Facebook post can do for a company and the reputation of an individual. So basically, the problem we have is a lack of precedent for being taken down, for being censored, for being moderated. There's nothing clear. There's no clear cookie cutter, this is what you can and can't do. And that matters if you're a business or bigger corporation and you have a big presence on social media, because you don't know where the line is. And if you approach Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they can't even tell you where the line is. So something to keep in mind, especially if you're in marketing the social media aspect of a business or company, or if you're a startup, or if you're an entrepreneur, and you have a large audience that you're reaching out to, a large listenership, viewership, whatever it may be. Just be cautious of ramifications for actions you didn't even know you took, or that you didn't even know you were supposed to be aware of. And again, that's a trend we'll continue to see, hopefully become more transparent in the future. So the big piece of news from the space industry and also for the tech industry is a story that broke yesterday. NASA meets Silicon Valley. Clip 1.
But first of all, NASA just gave assignments for the first 9 astronauts riding commercial spacecraft. 5 of them went to Boeing and 4 of them went to SpaceX. How big a deal is that?
Well, it's a big deal because it takes us into a whole new era. We've been basically, the United States has been renting space on Soyuz rockets and capsules to get our astronauts up to the space station for the last 7 or 8 years, and for the first time in a while now, we have the opportunity to launch our own astronauts on our own rockets.
Now that was from Bloomberg Tech, again, story that was published yesterday, and again, that's huge news for SpaceX. Essentially, SpaceX is training NASA astronauts to fly on the company's Dragon capsule. And as you may know, Elon Musk, he's been pretty busy this past week dealing with Tesla after announcing to the world in a late afternoon tweet that he wanted to take Tesla private. He sent investors, analysts, the media, plenty of Tesla owners and fans into a frenzy, which, by the way, Tesla is now suing the province of Ontario over EV rebates, so there's another issue for you. But back to the SpaceX. SpaceX has its passenger crews all picked out, and their flight dates are set for April 2019 if all goes to plan. And now it's time to prepare them for the trip into space. On Monday, SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell hosted the first 4 NASA astronauts who will be riding into space on the company's new passenger spacecraft. That's the Crew Dragon, which is being built for NASA's Commercial Crew program. And the company gave the press their first peek at the tools the astronauts will use to train for these inaugural flights. So again, that's huge news. NASA, not quite dead. It's taken a big hit over the past couple decades, or especially the past decade. We think about the cutbacks during the Bush administration, during the Obama administration, and, maybe it took Silicon Valley to spark a little bit of activity again. Now, continuing from that Bloomberg tech piece, here, we'll play another soundbite for you, clip 2.
I think the development of the Falcon 9 rocket, as well as the Dragon capsule over the last few years, has been steady. It's gone well. It hasn't had any major technical glitches. I believe the Boeing capsule, the Starliner, had some fuel leaks, I believe. But as far as SpaceX, no, this program has gone on schedule.
So again, we're seeing success and planning in the cooperation between SpaceX and NASA, Silicon Valley and NASA, and even Boeing, of course, being involved in designing and production. And in light of all that's been happening with Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, we'll leave you with a quote from CNBC's Jim Cramer.
This is not a conventional company. He does things that are not conventional. If you want to short it, you're shorting You're shorting the honey badger. Honey badger don't care.
That's going back a ways. Almost forgot about that one.
Tune in next week for more breaking and important news. From all of us here at Whirlwind Radio, this is Jonathan Mansour. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week.